Jumbo, salam alaikum, namaste and sasriyakal. Welcome again to Ammijaan's kitchen. Today I have two things planned for you, but before that let me introduce you to my apron that was brought for me from Alaska. Thank you, those who know brought it for me. So there we are, that's my apron from Alaska. Now what we're going to do today is make African barbecued meat. We call it mishkaki. And obviously we're going to marinate it and skewer it. So that's the part I'm going to do with you. And then the finished product, you barbecue it. And with it, we normally have kidney beans. So I've got a tin of kidney beans and all the other spices ready to go. So let's start cooking. So here we are. We'll start with the mishkaki first. This was sirloin tip roast, but you could buy any other kind of roast as well. I find the sirloin tip is quite nice. It's marbled. You don't want it to be marbled. Nice and kind of leanish too. The cheaper the cut, the longer the marinade. That's how it works. So if you did top sirloin, you would need even less marination. And if you did an outside round or chuck or blade, then at least overnight. And what I've found that helps to tenderize it a little bit is kiwi. So just very little, because if you over put the kiwi, it kind of gets the meat to almost disintegrate, and you don't want it to get to that stage. So just to start with our introduction of the spices that we're going to be using, we've said kiwi. This is garam masala. And this is cumin and coriander. Salt. Lots of garlic and ginger. Lemon juice. And this is, the Chinese garlic sriracha sauce. And a little bit of olive oil just to sort of get it to be mixing well. So we'll start with the wet first, so it can kind of have movement happening in there. So size can depend on, like that one is a little bit too big, but doesn't matter, I basically, rule of thumb, about a 3/4 inch to a 1/2 inch or a good inch. Whatever you think that you would like. And then these ones, I like to use this nice metal skewers. But if you're using bamboo skewers, remember to soak them for quite a while, because otherwise they burn very easily. So metal skewers are good, and with us, the family, there's only 3 of us today, so I'm just going to make that. So first thing I'm going to do is just drizzle a little bit of olive oil. Doesn't matter what kind of olive oil, okay? Just to sort of, and especially since there's not a lot of fat on this meat. Honestly, I like it more fatty. Next time I'll probably pick something that's got a little more fat, especially when it's got fat on the end of it, kind of like a good steak, And then here's a bit of salt. And some people might say they don't like to salt their meat well before it cooks, but I like it in this particular case. So there we have. So another wet thing that's going to go in, and that kind of acts as a little bit of a tenderizer too, is lemon juice. So it's lemon juice. You can kind of judge how much you need. Believe we have about 1 kilo of meat here today, okay? And then this is our garlic and ginger. I'll go this much. I'm almost going to use it all up, especially when I put a wet, meaty spatula in there. But I just wanted to put a little bit first. Give it a good stir. And mix it up. And you can always put your hands in there to give it a really good mix. There's the sriracha, going back still to the wet ingredients. So it can actually sort of start to stick to the meat. That's what you're after. Okay, it smells good already. I'm going to put the rest of this. And now, here we are. These are cumin and coriander. And this is strong garam masala. So, nice amount of that. And then let's do this again a little bit more. And if you feel it's a little bit dry, feel free, a little more oil. And that helps even while it's cooking, and then they would throw the rest of the lemon juice in there. Smells delicious. Now for the kiwi, I will put my hands in there because I just have 2 little pieces, and I want to make sure that it sort of really sticks to everything on the meat. So right now you can see it's all nicely mixed up. Each piece is coated, and like I can feel that cut is going to be quite tender. But even then, let's just do this. So what I do, because I don't eat kiwi at home, it bothers my throat, I actually just have this kiwi in the freezer. As you can see, it's just a thick, it's basically a slice, and that's it. So I'm just going to actually squish it and just throw it in there. It's still frozen. So just throw it in there. There we are. And now you have to get nitty-gritty with it. So what we're going to do is remove the spatula out of the way and literally get that kiwi mixing into the meat. Otherwise it just sits on top for one piece, and that's not what you're after. And like we said earlier, the how do you say, the cheaper, not so much cheaper, but the tougher the cut, the longer the marinade, and maybe a little bit bigger piece of kiwi if it's really like a chuck one or a blade roast. And then give it a good old mix. The kiwi is completely amalgamated in there, and that's how we're going to leave it. And now just saran wrap it, leave it in the fridge overnight, at least up to minimum of 6 hours. Or in today's case, really, we're going to be eating in a couple of hours. But that's fine too, because I can tell the cut's quite nice and lean. So there we are, and this is African Mishkaki. We'll show you when it's all skewered up, and of course when it's all barbecued and ready to eat. So thanks again, but don't go away, because we're coming back with the maharage, which is the African beans. This is my lovely harvest from the garden. I forgot to show it to you before. These are my variety of tomatoes and cucumbers that are coming from the garden. So today with the mishkaki, we'll definitely have some of that as a salad. And another thing I was going to say with the mishkaki, the maharage, which is the beans, we typically have ugali, which is African polenta. We're not going to make that today, but you can make that. You can make rice, or even bread could go with it. And I think what would be even nicer is naan bread. So here we are. So these are my lovely harvests from the garden, and it's coming to an end, but we enjoyed them thoroughly. And actually, talking about harvest from the garden, these tomatoes are these ones, just the big ones, picked out and blended up for today's sauce that we're going to make. So here we are. We've got all the ingredients. Did we talk about these ingredients? I'm not sure. So let's just say it again. No, we haven't talked about these ingredients. So I have onion, red pepper, garlic, ginger, cumin and coriander. You can see the two colors. Turmeric, salt, the fresh tomatoes we talked about, a whole chili, kidney beans, and cilantro at the very end. Okay, so we need olive oil in there, just a drizzle. Okay, so just nice enough to cover the pan. And let's get the heat going. There we are. Maybe a little bit more, just to cover the bottom. And the first thing we'll do with this is put in the onion and the red pepper, and then the chili in. I'm just going to take the end of that chili. So there. And if you don't cut the chili, it sort of gives you that little choice of not having the heat right away into the sauce. And then when you want to eat it, or whoever wants to eat it and have it closer and hotter, can always break it up on their plate. So here we are. We'll start with the onions. I'm not going to wait for the oil to actually get too hot. And then the red pepper. So just give it a little mix. And now here we are going to wait a little bit until we can get a little bit of color. There we are. So you want the onion to be just slightly golden brown and starts to soften up, and the red pepper as well. And then as soon as it gets to this stage, you want to add just a little bit of any sort of liquid that you will be using later, and that just sort of softens it right down. You know, basically you're adding moisture to it. Just a little bit, and the whole time the heat has been on medium-low. So there it is. You can see it's all sort of becoming amalgamated into a nice sauce. I'm just going to move this here. Okay. There. And now that it has a base of it, this is the perfect time to start adding our spices. So garlic, ginger, cumin and coriander, turmeric, and that red chili that we talked about. I mean green chili. There we are. Let's smoosh that around. Let the spices get right into it. And then we're going to decide on the salt here. The moisture is making it stick. There we are. Just cook it around a little bit. Get it all nice. You can see it's all sort of coming together as a paste almost, which is what you're after. And at this stage, there's nothing wrong with this, so just kind of have a taste. You have to taste what you're cooking, otherwise by the time you realize that you wanted more spice, you've already gone too far a stage to come back. The tomatoes go in, and almost simultaneously really the beans go in. Now this is your choice. I like to keep the nice thick broth. Some people don't. They like to wash it, and you know, everybody has a different opinion of what's good for you and what's not, and that's not a problem. You can dump it, rinse it. I personally find the flavor is lovely with that nice thick, there, you can see that beautiful color and the paste. So there, everything is nice and spiced up. At this stage, we are basically going to leave it alone now for at least a good 20 minutes or so, but not to worry, because we'll tell you all that on the video, on the recipe. Yeah, it's good, but obviously the spices are still raw, so that's the whole point. Now we're waiting for that next stage. There's no heat for me. I'd like a little more heat. The whole chili, I guess, sort of reduced the heat. This is where you decide. You want more salt, less salt, whether you want more chili or not. And we're going to leave it like that, cover it like any other curry or sauce, and we're going to let it cook. And you know, when the next stage comes, you'll see it when you know that it's ready. So medium high again, leave it covered, and we'll come back. So here we are. We have our curry finishing out there. I've marinated, skewered the mishkaki for you guys just to see. So there, just nice big giant skewers, makes it easier. We had a little bit too much, so I made a couple of little ones too. And a couple of little tips for you. One is when you make too much mishkaki and you don't want to use it all up right away, that's what I did. So this is what I have done. I make a zippy bag, put them in there. It's already marinated, write the date, and then basically throw it in the freezer. And sometimes, you know, with the busy schedule that we have, you can just grab it out of the freezer, leave it in the fridge. When you come home, it's ready to skewer and barbecue. And another little tip that I do is, that's the clock. Another little tip that I do is for the kiwi, you can use a zester. And then I actually just, you know, because it's hard from the freezer, so I just grate it or zest it on top of the meat before I marinate it, of course. So that's the last bit of the mishkaki. This is going on the barbecue. This is going back in the fridge to go in the freezer for another time. Let's come back over to our Maharage curry. And remember, try and eat it with Italian polenta, or if you can, find the African ugali, or worst case scenario, rice and naan is good enough. So here we are, this is it. When we left it, it was kind of watery, but now you can see it's all nice and thick. And that chili is still whole. I put another little half chili because I like mine a little bit hot. And now the last two ingredients left is fresh lemon juice. So in it goes. And cilantro. Always cilantro with Indian cooking. You cannot do it without cilantro. And there it is. And the next picture you see will be the barbecue meat and a nice bowl of Maharage. So today, if you were to say it in African terms, it's Mishkaki and Maharage. Enjoy, and remember to please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again very soon on Ammijaan's Kitchen. Have a good night.